and welcome to our last Multicultural AFL football show for the year. I am Vanessa Gatica, and with me to talk about all things AFL footy, I'm joined by my two co-panelists, who also come from diverse ethnic backgrounds, Javier Sinkang and Gabriel D'Angelo. Hello guys, how are you?
Hello Vanessa.
Vanessa, Javier.
Gabriel, Javier and I will be bringing you the latest AFL results and previews of the finals. We will also be reviewing multicultural players' performances during the 2018 season. Last Friday night at the MCG, we witnessed a real shocker, as the Magpies were far too good and outclassed the defeating Premiers by 97-58. Javier, was this result a shock, or has this outcome been building in the Magpies for a while?
Yeah, well, to me it was building for a while. The way Magpies have performed this season, it's been immaculate. They have so many players coming on the big stage and performing well. They have a lot of injuries still, people coming in and getting into their positions, getting into their roles and performing very well. So it was building up, but there was one thing which was lacking, to play the game for like fourth quarter sometimes. That's what happened in the last game against Richmond as well. They were at par with Richmond, as we talked before as well. So it was just that they needed some sort of energy or something like that. I believe Mason Cox would have provided that in this game, I can say. But overall, if we look at them, they performed really well, and Richmond, like they were found complacent this time. I believe all that talk about Dusty Martin's injury was actually true. I think that probably had impact as well. The way Levy Greenwood was on him, and he just covered him, and it took him like 15 odd minutes to get his hand to the ball. So it was a very bad performance by I would say Richmond, knowing the standards they have shown this year. So yeah, that was in the building, and that has come to the fore in this match.
Yeah, I agree. This was building in the Magpies, because in the last few weeks they have been playing some really good footy. I mean, the game against West Coast in Perth, they were a bit unlucky not to win that game. And then when they played against GWS at the MCG, they totally blew them away, but they were very inaccurate in front of goal. And the game against Richmond, well, they were just really, really good. I love the way that they were just unafraid, they were adventurous, and they actually beat Richmond at their own game, so to speak. And the good thing about Collingwood's game is, and you mentioned it earlier, is that when Richmond started to come back in that final quarter, you thought, wow, maybe Richmond might actually win this game, they might actually steal it. Collingwood didn't panic. They didn't get into a hissy fit or anything like that. They were calm, they composed, and then they just finished off the game, which was really good to see. Plus Mason Cox, he had an amazing game. That was the sort of performance that we were hoping that he could have, because the last two games he wasn't that good, but it was good to see him play so well. And just on Richmond, I thought that this was the loss that they had to have, because they have been a little bit arrogant. They sort of seem to have this aura, this countenance of inevitability, like, oh, we'll just beat Collingwood and then we'll go back to back in the grand final, like it was done and dusted. Well, now they know that they're not invincible, but Richmond being Richmond, they'll come back and they'll be bigger and better next year. But yeah, Collingwood, an amazing job.
On Saturday afternoon at Optus Stadium in Perth, the West Coast Eagles destroyed a very sluggish Melbourne, winning easily 121-55. Gabriel, the fairy tale for the Demons had a very sad ending. They just weren't good enough.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, it was a sad ending, because it was sad to see them play like that and lose in the manner in which they lost. Look, I think that they played the occasion rather than the game, and you can just tell on looks on the players' faces that they were just so extremely nervous. And you know, it's totally fine to be nervous. I mean, they're human beings after all, and it's quite normal to be nervous to play in a game of that magnitude, in that sort of environment in Perth, and you know, all those crazy Eagle supporters. But it was just a nervousness of a different level, and you can actually see the look on the faces of the players that they were really like in fear. You know, look, experience is a harsh teacher. It gives the exam first and the lesson afterwards. So I'm pretty sure that Melbourne will learn from their mistakes, and hopefully they can bounce back next year. I think they can. They've got some very good young players that will do some wonders for the Demons in the next few years. I think that Melbourne supporters should be extremely proud of the way that Melbourne performed during the year. We all thought that Melbourne were going to be in the finals. We didn't expect them to do so well and make it all the way to the preliminary finals. And not only that, but they just played some extremely good footy. They belted, well, they didn't belt, but they played an extremely good game against Geelong and Hawthorn, teams that are far more experienced in finals footy than they are. So they did an amazing job. That's probably why I thought they were going to beat West Coast. I thought they had that momentum coming in. So Melbourne fans can be extremely proud of Melbourne's season, and hopefully they can work on it for next year.
Yeah, I agree. I think the stage fright got to them. I think it was quite overwhelming, Perth crowd and all the occasion. I think that sort of got to them. And I believe there was, I would say, a lack of practice, as in that they didn't prepare too well, I believe, for the game. I think that's probably why they, at the start, they were like in a state of shock when West Coast was there to make a mark, and they did. And like in the first quarter, they had no answers whatsoever. This is one of the probably the very shocking performances in the preliminary finals, as to mention. But I believe, as Gabriel mentioned as well, that they've got the potential, they've got the players, and this will help them become better in the coming season. Although I did mention the last one as well, that West Coast would be ready for them, because if that win didn't happen in the round 23 or so against West Coast, then they might have been a bit complacent, as they were against Bulldogs. But this time, I think, in the year they won the premiership, I believe. But this time, West Coast was ready for it. Mitch McGowan, last time he couldn't make a mark, he was ready for it. And this time, their defense got to them, and midfield and the forwards, they just played extremely well.
Well, quickly moving on to a regular Q&A segment. Tonight is a little bit different because we will discuss the performance of some multicultural players and talk about how well they performed during the year. Javier, starting with you. Many had said that GWS superstar Stephen Coniglio was unlucky to miss out on all Australian selection. Was it justified, or was he just overlooked this year?
Yeah, I believe he was overlooked, and I agree with those people who say that he missed out on a big opportunity, because the way he played this year, he's one of the most consistent midfielders in the game, and he has made impact on every game. He's had he scored like 20 odd goals, 28 sort of approximately disposals every game, and then 21 sort of goals in the whole season. That's a big thing for a player to do that, and he had that. He was able to get into the different positions and perform on every position. So I believe he was overlooked. He had a great performance this year. I think even he said that this was probably the best performance so far like whatever he has played. So I believe he was overlooked.
Gabriel. The Sydney Swans seem to keep finding new talent to their improving side with young gun Aliir. Surprising many with his development. Can he keep it up next year, or will we have a second year Gibbs?
Well, I hope he can get better, because I think he's a player of tremendous potential. He's a great talent. He's this gem that Sydney have sort of sprouted out of nowhere. I think he's an amazing player. He's strong, he's agile, he's quick, and he's got this composure that for a player of his youth and inexperience that many players don't have. I think that he is just the right fit for Sydney. I think he's just playing some really good footy at the moment, and I hope he gets better. And well, the Sydney Swans, they've put their faith in him because they've given him an extension, a 3-year extension to his contract. So obviously they see some value in him, and hopefully that Aliir will not only play more games next year, but he gets better with every game, because I think he's really the type of player that could potentially become a player of an elite AFL standard. I really do.
Bachar Houli has gone from strength to strength at the Tigers and had a solid season. How do you assess his performance this season?
Well, I would say it's a solid performance for him, because he's averaging around like 21 disposals for a player for his caliber in the defense, and to get the ball forward and everything. It's a big thing. He's had a solid season, but the fact that he didn't play all the games, he's someone who who has that ability to play all the games, and he's only been injured for like 2 games or so in the last 7 years or something like that. So he's the player who plays the whole season. So I think that might have had that impact on him as well. So that injury, I would say, would have made some impact on him, the way he sort of underperformed at some stage, I would say. But last year was like phenomenal, like he was up there. Even this year it was very solid performance, but I believe according to his own standards, I believe he was beat down. But he's a kind of a player who is very strong, who takes the ball forward. His left kick is immaculate, so I believe he will bounce back as well. But this year it was he was probably a bit low for his own performance.
Gabriel, it seems that Majak Dor has finally had a standout year. How did you rate his performance for the Roos this year?
Well, good. You know, I think Majak Dor has always been this work in progress. He's always been this player of raw talent and great potential, but only in glimpses has it actually been shown. It's never really come out in its full glory, so to speak, because, you know, he does do well, but only in patches, and this has brought out a lot of frustration into a lot of Kangaroo supporters because we expect so much from him. And once Scott put him into the defence, I think that he started to really grow as a player. I think he really started to mature a bit as well, and I think he's a little bit more comfortable in that role. And the good thing about Majak Dor is that he can also be thrown up front, and if they need some goals, if they need a little bit of pressure up front, he can provide it, and he's done that a few times during the season. So it's really good that Majak Dor has played well this year, but he really needs to extend on that next season. Next season he really needs to build up on the good work he's done this year, because he needs to not only solidify his place in the side as one of the key players in the side, but also North Melbourne, they have this potential to be a really a surprise packet for next season. They could actually make it to the finals, and if he has a good season, then they could make it. But Majak Dor, hopefully he does well, but he really needs to work on next season's work.
Thanks, boys. There are, of course, many other players of multicultural backgrounds who performed well this season, like Prestia, Silvani, Saharakis, Bontempelli, Popolo, Natanui, Young, Miller, Cox, Martin, Scholl, and Johannesson, just to name a few. We will return after the break with more AFL news on the Multicultural Football Show, so stick around. Welcome back on the second half. You're watching the Multicultural AFL Football Show. As this program is recorded on Monday, we do not have the Brownlow results for you because it is happening tonight. Your Brownlow prediction, Gabriel?
I think that Tom Mitchell's going to win. I know that he's everyone's favourite and he's the bookie's favourite, and he just won the MVP, but I think that he's had an amazing season, so I think he's going to win the Brownlow medal.
Well, I agree with him. Tom Mitchell for me as well. The number of disposals he's had is more than everyone, and then he has that performance this year, which makes him a better player than everyone. So it's Tom Mitchell for me.
Tom Mitchell for me as well. Okay, let's get straight into the big game. Saturday, 2:30 p.m. at the MCG, it is the big one, the grand final between the Collingwood Magpies and West Coast Eagles. Javier, you had a good look at Collingwood during the finals game. Will the Magpies running players like Sidebottom, Barco, Trelaw, De Goey, and big man Cox be the key to the grand final success?
Definitely. They've proved that in the last game as well, and the Sidebottom has proved that the whole year, that he's a consistent performer, although they had other people coming in and performing well, but he's been there. He's been pivotal to their winning in every pretty much game. So I believe all these players, De Goey at the front, Mason Cox, I mean, I don't know, this guy from Texas, how many more wonders he can do, although they will come up with a plan to curb him, but I believe he's going to perform well as well. So yeah, I believe all these players will make a huge impact.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think that the great thing about Collingwood's season is that they haven't focused or relied on just the one player, that it's been a real team effort, that everyone is sort of happy to sort of share the load, so to speak. Having said that, and at the risk of just contradicting what I just said, I think that I agree with you in Steele Sidebottom. I think that he's an amazing player. He's probably the most underrated player, in my opinion, the most underrated player in the AFL. I think he's just amazing. His tackling, his ball use, and his leadership, I think, is really, really amazing. He's one of those players that are going to be key to Collingwood's victory if he plays well. So, yeah, I think you're right with what you said about Collingwood and about Sidebottom. Totally agree.
Gabriel, after they win against Melbourne, will the Eagles' big men like McGovern, Kennedy and Darling be as dominant against the Magpies as they were against Melbourne? Is West Coast midfield better than the Magpies?
I think they can. Those guys are players of tremendous ability. I mean, those guys can really set the agenda of any match. The good thing about McGovern, Darling and Kennedy is that not only they're big, but they're extremely mobile, that they're not clumsy. They're the type of players that can really set the tone, so to speak, for any match. Those guys will give Collingwood some headaches, but having said that, Collingwood, their defence had an amazing match against Richmond's forward line. The Richmond forward line isn't as tall or as big or as bulky as West Coast, but Richmond are Richmond. Yeah, they're an amazing team and their defence did a fantastic job. So it's going to be very interesting to see the matchup between their defence and West Coast's forward line. That's probably where the game is going to be won and lost. But West Coast, they not only have good big men, but they've got some fantastic little guys that do tremendous work. You've got players like Rioli, Ryan, Lacroix. They're playing some really good footy at the moment. I think that's, Rioli and Ryan in particular, they've just been revelations this season. They've been playing really, really well. And Ryan, he had an amazing game against Melbourne. I mean, Melbourne could not stop him. They just could not find a way to neutralise him. So you've got those guys and Lacroix. He's really had a fantastic final series. I mean, at the beginning of the year, many people had written him off as being done and dusted, but he's sort of sprouted back and blossomed again. So he's doing really, really well. So in order for Collingwood to really have a good game, or to at least have a chance of winning the grand final, they need to neutralise all the bases. They need to make sure they have all the bases covered. They need to look after the big men and those little guys as well.
Yeah, what I believe is it's as simple as that they need to think that they're playing at the Optus Stadium, not at MCG. And these two guys can have a lot of impact, Jack Darling and Josh Kennedy. And they can keep up the stat this year that if they both are playing, they haven't lost a match. So I believe they're going to have a huge impact as well. Although their defense, Magpies' defense, is doing phenomenal as well. Tyson Goldsack, as I mentioned before, the way he came back from injury and performed at this level, it's just fantastic. And Jeremy Howe, like, you put anyone on him and he's doing his job. And midfield, it's going to be very competitive. As you mentioned, all those players and Luke Shuey as well, I believe it's not going to depend as well on whether Mitch McGowan play or not. I believe he's going to be fit for this game. And same is with Luke Shuey. I think they both are under a bit of injury concerns at the moment. But if they all play, I believe this time I've just got this gut feeling that West Coast gonna come much more prepared. Not like because we generally see that whenever they go interstate, they don't perform to their performance, and all these big names sort of gave away on the big stage like MCG, and especially on I would say finals as well. But Adam Simpson, he's done that against Melbourne. To me, they performed well beyond their probably own expectations. Yeah, so I believe they're gonna come up quite hard on Collingwood, but I believe, although Collingwood got the ammunition to stop them as well, but it's going to be a great contest. Ryan flying on one side, getting the speckies on Jeremy Howe on the other side, and then it's going to be fantastic to look at, and it's going to be a lot of competition. Really looking forward to that.
Your tips for the grand final. I want to know from you 3 answers. Who will win? By how much? And who will take out the Norm Smith medal? Starting with you, Javier.
I believe for me it's going to be Collingwood, although I strongly believe that West Coast is going to come much more prepared. And if Collingwood are a bit complacent, they're going to bite the dust, because the way these guys are performing and the way Josh Kennedy performed last week, he wants to own this place. He wants to own this premiership pretty bad. The reason being, he's up there forward taking the marks. He's in the middle of the field taking the marks. As you said before, that they're quite agile as well. So he's got that advantage of being big and being agile. So he's going to have a big impact on this game, I believe. And Jack Darling with him, and then all the midfield that we talked about, I believe it's going to be a phenomenal match, and it's going to be a close one for me. Maybe Collingwood winning by 10%, giving them the advantage of home crowd and MCG. But I think it's going to be a very close game. And with Norm Smith, I tend to go for side bottom, although there are a lot of players in Collingwood side, or for that sake, if West Coast wins, any player could be could win that Norm Smith medal. But I believe generally we've seen that midfielders have a bit of advantage over the others and the way they perform. So I believe for me it will be side bottom who will win the Norm Smith.
I think Collingwood are going to win. I think they're going to win by about 30 odd points. I think it's going to be close for the first 2 quarters, but then Collingwood are going to extend their lead. I think that West Coast, they have performed very, very well at the MCG before. They have won a few games, but I think Collingwood at home, they're just so comfortable, and they've got the black and white army behind them. I think that that's going to be a huge advantage, having that extra man, so to speak. So I think that Collingwood are going to win, and I hope whoever wins the Norm Smith medal actually deserves it, because Bashir Hooley was robbed last year. He should have won the Norm Smith medal. He was by far the best player on the ground. They were just so enamoured with the fairy tale story of Dustin Martin winning the Brownlow and winning the premiership, and so they gave him the Norm Smith medal. I think that was BS. I think Bashir Hooley should have won that. So whoever wins the Norm Smith, I hope they actually deserve it.
Okay, I think Collingwood going to win. That is my pick. And that is all for the Multicultural Football Show for the year. Don't forget to listen to us on 3ZZZ FM, other national radio stations, and online at the NEMBC's AFL Footy website. We will be back next year on Channel 31 with lots more AFL action and multicultural footy. I am Vanessa Gatica.
I'm Harbeer Singh.
I'm Gabriel D'Angelo.
Thank you for watching. Good luck for both teams on Saturday, and goodbye until next footy season.
Let me hear you say